still to this day, I meet people that have been living in New York, Japanese people living here for 25 years, and they give me the same shit. They're like, it's so amazing what you've been able to do with the Japanese culture, and your palate's so, and I'd be like, go fuck yourself. You've been living here for 25. How about you? Ooh, it's so cool that you're a New Yorker. Like, can you ride the subway? When you eat a pretzel, how do you get it into your mouth? It must be very hard for you. And then they get really insulted, and they're like, well, what are you saying to me? And I was like, the same shit you're saying to me.
You're listening to the Taste Podcast. I'm Editor-in-Chief Matt Rodbard, here with Senior Editor Anna Hezel.
Ivan Orkin is a chef, entrepreneur, and the man behind the legend of Ivan Ramen. He joins Matt in the studio to talk about all of that. Also on the show later on, we'll be talking to Smitten Kitchen's Deb Perelman, playing a friendly game of F, Marry, Kill. But first, Matt, what did you and Ivan talk about? What's going on with Ivan?
Ivan Orkin, ramen god, I bow down. It was an amazing conversation. I always love talking to Ivan. He takes me back to 2012 when he entered the New York City food media universe with this insanely popular pop-up at Momofuku Noodle Bar. I think every single blog covered it. It was a really big moment for him, and we talk all about that. We also talk about his ups and downs running restaurants in New York, different types of ramen shops and different concepts, and how it's kind of always a struggle to make it work in this really competitive city.
He's also in the pizza game now, right? Very New York of him.
Definitely. Ivan knows pizza. He's loved it for years, and he has his own slice shop. And we talk about what it's like to run a slice shop, and also give some opinions about the $1 slice. Anna, the $1 slice, kind of in the news these days.
Very controversial. Here's Matt talking to Ivan Orkin.
Ivan Orkin, welcome to the Taste Podcast.
Thank you.
You're on a Pilates kick.
I'm on a Pilates kick, yes.
Dude, you look awesome.
Because I'm old.
Well,
I'm old. Unlike everybody else in this industry, I'm on the other side of 60. So
you're wearing a fitted shirt, and
yeah,
you're kind of rippling out of the shirt.
Yeah, well, I'm trying to. I have a 9-year-old, so I need to keep up with him, and I have 100+ employees, and I have a lot of things going on, so I need to be healthy. And these days, if you're my age and you're not taking care of yourself, then you're stupid, because all the evidence is in.
I wanted to go back. You had quite a following in Tokyo with your restaurants. Then you came to America, right, and did this event at Momofuku Noodle Bar in 2012. I remember sitting at my desk at another job and reading Eater or Grub Street or one of the blogs, and I remember seeing this guy and seeing this name and seeing a long fucking line at Noodle Bar lining up for your ramen.
Yeah,
like. That was a crazy couple of days. Take us back to that, because I want to hear about that.
Well, that was cool. I mean, when I first, now I have a bunch of restaurants and I got all these things going on. But when I came back to New York, I was just a guy. I mean, I had this, this underground following. People kind of knew about me, and I did the Lucky Peach article, which
that was your connection.
That was the entry into. Yeah, it was the entry into New York a bit, and into the American cooking world. At least I got, I was on the cover of what ended up being this wonderfully, hot, cool magazine, and I was friends with a bunch of the people that were doing it, and so Peter Meehan called me and he said, "I think you should do a pop-up at Momofuku." He goes, "I'm going to set it up." And he did, and he made a few phone calls, and it just got set up, and it was really fun. And, this was back when, like I said, I might not run the restaurants day to day anymore, but I still do these things. And at that time, I was making everything from scratch in my kitchen up in the burbs, and then schlepping it down, and anytime I did an event, I did everything myself. And so I went to the kitchen, and a few days before the pop-up, we started prepping, and I did most of the work, and they helped me out with stuff, but I still knew what I wanted to do, and it sold out right away. Like right away, it sold out, and then you added a second. Well, we messed up because we did. I don't think they realized how many people would come, and it just ended up being this. We didn't have enough.
Yeah.
And it was a real drag because all these people came, and it was August, and it was 95 degrees outside.
That's right. It was
Right.
August. It was like the
August.
craziest
It was
time.
95 degrees. The line went all the way around the block.
Yeah.
And I personally went and talked to every single person in line and apologized for running out of food, and I invited everyone back.
It was really endearing. I remember, and I got to get to know this guy. And tell me what happened after that moment. Were people knocking on your door to open in New York?
Well, I mean, I think no. And this is the whole thing that's so funny about how one sees someone like me, because they'll be like, oh, well, I mean, people just must have been, begging you to do stuff. And I'm like, well, yes and no. I mean, people beg you to do stuff, but they don't want to give you any money, or they say, I'll do it for you, and now I own you. So anything you do, it's great because now I'm going to make all this money. And you're like, yeah, no, that doesn't sound good for me. I don't think I want to do that. And I met a lot of people who wanted to work with me, but, wanted to really either control everything or let me keep, a couple of percentage points or whatever. And I've already known that I work better when I'm in control, and I'm not greedy. So I haven't, I hope someday to say, financially, oh, wow, I ended up making a bunch of money doing that. That's so cool. But
you're not driven by that.
I'm not driven. I'm not. I mean, I am, because I think that I don't think anybody should ever open a business where they don't have a fantasy of making a lot of money. And they could say that all that money is going to go to charity, and I'm going to live on a carpet in the middle of the, I don't know, whatever, in the woods. But I do think you have to have a drive to have a financially viable business.
You ended up opening on Clinton Street, where your restaurant remains.
Yep.
And that neighborhood is an interesting spot to open because you've seen like waves of popularity, and you've seen Brooklyn, but you're still on Clinton Street. Tell us about the restaurant? What's happening there?
Clinton Street's a tough street. I
mean, it's tough.
It's a beautiful. I think it's one of the last real neighborhoods in New York.
We're talking about the Lower East Side.
Right.
Yeah, it's tough. It's a really cool, unique little pocket there in the Lower East Side.
It's a pocket because to the east, the income level drops precipitously, and so those people don't go to the restaurants on Clinton Street because they don't have. Because I mean, even though I don't think my restaurant's particularly expensive, asking someone who doesn't make a lot of money to spend $30 or $40 on a meal is a lot. So you don't really have. It doesn't speak to that part of the neighborhood. It doesn't speak to the Orchard Street, Ludlow area where it's mostly drinking and it's very young and a lot of. So I'm a real destination spot. And we struggled. I mean, I worked really hard. There were times when summers were very lean, and it's hard, having even though I had a nice following until the Netflix show. Now we've been blessed with a lot of.
So you're now in all the tourist maps, and because of Chef's Table, your episode, which is definitely one of my favorites, straight up, man, you're super honest in it. People are coming to Clinton Street as a pilgrimage.
It's so nice. I mean, I've like big tears in my eyes. People are so kind and they're so nice, and they're so excited. And I've always felt this way. I mean, even when back in Tokyo, I'd have a 2 or 3 hour line every day, and I used to feel so guilty. And my guests, I'd be like, I'm so sorry you have to wait in line. And they'd be like, what are you talking about? This is the best. We're so excited. And I'd be like, I know, but it's like 2 hours you've been standing out here and it's freezing out. They'd be like, no, don't worry about it.
But that's a cultural difference.
That's a cultural difference.
The way that that Japanese diners appreciate food in a way that's maybe slightly different than it. Can you tell me about that, like the difference in the diners?
Well, I mean, first of all, ramen is obviously much more. It's a much different food. I mean, it's much more like going to a really cool, simple hamburger shop or slice shop in America, in a way, because the ramen is. First of all, the ramen shops. Japan can be a very buttoned down type of place, very, and ramen shops in Japan, I see ramen as the maverick cuisine of Japan. As a matter of fact, I would do interviews and I would refer to ramen as a cuisine, and I would get incredible pushback. They'd be like, "Well, it's not a cuisine; it's ramen. It's crap." And I'd be like, "Yeah, it's really hard to make good ramen, though. I mean, there's a lot of really bad ramen, but the good ramen is really complex."
People would say to you, look you in the eyes, and say ramen is crap.
Sure. Well, when I told people that I was opening a ramen shop, people who knew me. They said, "Wow, I'm so sorry to hear about your fall from grace." And they'd be like, "You worked at Lutece, right? You went to the CIA, right? Now you're having a ramen shop. I'm so sorry. What happened?" And but then again, 25 years ago, if Daniel Boulud said, I'm going to open a hamburger chain, people would say, oh, wow, I think he's a little crazy. What's wrong? Now, if he said it, they'll be like, oh, my God, this is awesome. The burger's going to be great. Yay. You know, so it's the world view on street food and comfort food has changed a lot. And I think now ramen is the uber comfort food. It's all in that bowl. It's a little bit messy. It's a little bit unhealthy. Or a lot. Mine's a little bit unhealthy. There's some that are a lot unhealthy. It's really fun to eat. Kids love it, so you can bring your kids to it. It's such a nice type of thing to eat. You know,
which segues to news late last fall. You are expanding.
Right.
So Slurp Shop has been open in the Gotham West Market for a few years now.
Right.
4 years? Is that right?
Gotham Market opened a little over 5 years ago.
5 years ago, you had the Slurp Shop there.
Ivan Ramen is 5 years in May.
Amazing. And you are now opening what I believe is a franchise model for the Slurp Shop, and you're going to open
Well, not for the Slurp. We're going to start with a prototype, and probably, I mean, I took the Slurp Shop, much to a lot of people's chagrin, because I was already planning to open the bigger one downtown. But I got a really good offer, and I thought, you know, what a cool way to be able to sort of experiment with this QSR model and see how it works. And the price of admission was something I could afford myself, so it's mine. And I was really able to learn a lot. And at the same time, I've learned a lot downtown, and I love the service model down there very much. I love our beer program. I love the appetizers we've come up with, and our guests seem to have a really fun time down there. So I think that going forward, and as I said, you know, in the articles that talk about what I'm doing, and I'm going to take over the world. Well, I'm sure I'd like to, and I'd like to have ramen shops in every, you know, nook and corner of the world. I'm going to start off with one.
Yeah, it's a good number to start off with.
I'll start off with one. We're going to have a prototype, and we're going to play around with it. We are interested in the franchise model because it allows growth. Both ways. You know, company owned and opening a lot, or franchise owned. There's pros and cons to both models. I've been convinced after doing a lot of research that I like the franchise model, so that's what we're going to move.
So,
towards.
what does this new concept look like, and what types of ramen styles will be serving? What else will be serving? I'm just really curious because I look at a world where Sweetgreen is now a unicorn; it's worth $1 billion, and people just love Sweetgreen. There's a lot to learn from that company.
Well, it also took them 11 years.
It sure did, and you know what? You're here 6 years in the States, so it's not even like your baby compared to that. Right. But I'm really, really excited to see what you do with this on a larger scale because I think your food is fucking awesome. So
thank you. The good thing is that I've been in this business for close to 30 years. I've seen a lot and I've done a lot, and the way I set up this business from day one is that all different types of systems and ways to keep the quality consistent. And so moving towards having multiples of what I'm already doing is kind of easy for me to think through because it's how I think already. So I always think in terms of, well, how could I make a lot of that? And, rejecting certain dishes because we all agree that it's just too hard to reproduce well or whatever. There's a lot of, we're chefy, and yet there are certain times where we make ourselves pull back because it's, too chefy is something that ends up being too difficult to reproduce. And, to me, I bumped into some guests the other day when I was at downtown, and they talked about how they brought clients all the time, and they were very kind, and they said some really nice things. And I said to them, this is really important to me because, you brought these people with you because you wanted to show off this restaurant you really enjoy. And if the food tasted different than the last time, you would have been really embarrassed. And they would have said, come on, man, this is crap. Why'd you schlep us down here? And so I take that as a huge challenge and a big responsibility to make sure that people are always tasting what they look forward. Not just the new dishes, but whatever someone falls in love with, you want that to taste the same every time.
What type of ramen will you be serving, though? Like what?
I think we're going to stick close to what we have. We have the classics, which is the shio and the shoyu, which is the dishes that I developed in Japan, and I continue. They're still pretty different from most of the shops in the States at the moment. I mean, I think some are moving towards that, but I still think that the tonkotsu style
is still a king in New York.
And the tonkotsu is the king in Japan. I mean, I think rich, heavy, intense, food is always going to be, really popular. It's easy to understand. It's hits you in the face. I started making ramen when I was in my 40s, and we used to, before I ever even thought to make a ramen shop, we would just drive around. It was right when the ramen boom was really kicking up, and we ate a lot. And I would just, every time I ate the tonkotsu style, I just either felt flat out sick or very sleepy or bloated, like, we eat at 11:30 in the morning, and by midnight I'm still full. And I just was like, I can't eat this at this age.
So let's talk about your shio, because I think that's my favorite out of it. So what makes great shio? I had shio up in Hokkaido last winter, and I felt this broth I feel great. I feel it's clean, it's pure.
Right.
What is your shio like?
Well, I mean, mine is the same. I mean, to me, when I finally discovered the lighter style ramens after eating lots of the tonkotsu, I kind of was like, oh, all right, this is more my speed. I really like it. I also think that the shio is the biggest challenge. It's like it's like grilling a piece of fish perfectly and dressing it just so enough so that the fish flavors are enhanced, but it doesn't. You still want to taste those delicate textures of the fish and the whatever. And I think shio ramen's the same. You want I've always made my own noodles. Now I have my recipe made for me, but it's still my noodle recipe that I developed, and I want the flavor of the noodles to shine through. I want the flavor of the broth I want the noodles in the broth to be the stars of the bowl, and then the garnishes to me were always the things that sort of came along with that. But
But they're really soigné. They're really like precise and perfect.
Because a lot of ramen shops you go and the egg is really salty and sweet, and the meat is really intense and has lots of tare on it, and it's so rich that the whole thing just sort of becomes this glob of sort of salt and fat, and that's and you know what, like I said, I'm very cautious to never. I don't criticize other people's food because I think, especially if it's something that's good, but maybe it's not my taste. And someone could say, you know what, Ivan, I don't really like the ramen you serve. Now, that's to me is fine. I mean,
because guess what? We all have different tastes.
We all have
and I think a lot of people in the
and-
food world kind of like make it like on a mountain, on top of a mountain, yelling down, saying,
Yeah,
this is
I mean,
good.
of course, I want everybody to tell me they love my food.
Yeah,
It's
but
important
taste.
to me. But if they said if they tell me your ramen's bad, now we can step outside.
But like mazamin versus shoyu, those are two very different flavor profiles.
Those are also very different
Yeah.
flavor profiles, and we do them all. And I think what we have on the menu right now is, the paitan I love. That's the paitan is, paitan being this hard cooked chicken broth, and it's creamy and rich. And to me, what I like about our paitan is it very much tastes like a tonkotsu. It hits a lot of those points, and yet it's a lot cleaner and brighter, and you don't feel quite as weighed down after you eat it. It is richer than the shio.
But chicken is just a killer, like just stock.
It is.
As Americans, I just feel we love chicken stock.
Yes, and I agree with you. And I think that, I've tried to come up with more chicken and vegetarian items because that's what I think a lot of guests really would like. I mean, for every geeky tonkotsu person, when they actually sit down, they're like, oh, you have a chicken one. Oh, nice. Oh, you have a vegetarian one. Yeah, and it's really good. Try it, and it's even our spicy is based on our chicken dashi broth. So even though it's really rich, it still has a lighter thing going on. So it's, I guess to me, my if I had a mantra, I had a thing on the wall when you walk out of the restaurant, it would say, feeling better going out than you did coming in. And that's what I tell my staff.
Workshopping this could work.
Yes, it's
on
on
a larger scale.
So, to me, well, it came about, this idea came about because my wife and I, a long time ago, I remember we both had some really delicious meal. And many hours later, we kind of looked at each other and we both had this knowing smile. And I knew at that instant we were both smiling about the meal we had eaten earlier. And And I was like, that's what I want for my guests. I want a couple to eat or whatever, and have them 3, 4, 5, 7 hours later to still be kind of smiling to themselves. Boy, I really enjoyed that lunch. I felt so good. And maybe they went to a meeting afterwards, and instead of nodding off, they're just feel energized. And I feel like when you go to my restaurant, if you order a normal amount if you eat 2 bowls of ramen and 6 appetizers, that's not my business. But if you have a bowl and a snack and a beer, you should feel good. And I want people to, because I'm a chef, and I think that chefs, when we're giving people sustenance, we're giving them food that should make them feel really good.
That's a great goal.
Yeah.
Do you make it back to Japan quite a bit? I know that you don't have a restaurant there now, but you've got a lot of family there.
I go as much as possible.
Okay.
I went in this year. God, I went a lot. I was there in April. I was there in June and July. I was there in November. And now I'm heading back again in February.
What are you doing there then?
This summer I actually did a web advertisement for CNN, which was super cool, about giving advice to eat at my favorite bars and restaurants.
Oh, it was like a tour.
Yeah,
thing.
It's on my Instagram. There's still a link on there, and it's really cool. But to me, when I go to Japan, it's a business trip. Whether I go there to actually do something, or if I'm just eating and catching up with people I know, I get re-energized when I'm there. I don't know if I ever told you this story, but when I was in my 20s, I went to see a person. What do you call a person who
a psychic?
I went to see a psychic.
Yeah,
and she told me that 400 years ago I was a samurai. But I was a wimpy samurai. I was with a really rich parents, and I mostly stayed at home and did artwork or something. It was hilarious.
True story.
Yeah, that's a true story. And I've recounted it many times how when I first came to Japan and the plane landed in Narita, I had a visceral feeling that I was coming home. And I have to tell you that I'm not a weird gaijin. I don't claim to be Japanese. I don't want to be Japanese.
You speak the language. You have children who are Japanese.
Yeah,
I agree.
I also have. There's something that I just when I feel sick, I eat rice porridge. When I'm happy, I eat, sushi. When I'm, even last night we made dinner and, we made this, we braised Napa cabbage in kombu for 45 minutes. We slurried it. It was freaking delicious. And I had made Japanese style hamburgers with grated daikon and shiso. And I was just and everybody at the table was so happy, my 9-year-old and my wife and I, and we were all just it was funny, but there's something about Japan, and I ache to go back. I don't want to run away from New York. I love it here, and I'm very much an American, and I love my country, and I'm enjoying being in New York very much.
It sounds like a pretty great setup.
Yeah.
Let's tell me this. I know Japan. A lot of folks talk about Tokyo, Kyoto, Osaka, but I want to know, where do you want to travel? Because it's kind of impossible to travel the whole country. There's lots of places I'm sure you want to go to. So tell me a few places. I'm
terrible about traveling. I'm really a homebody. Even in America, I don't go anywhere. And when I'm in Japan, I basically stay in my little, area. And I've always been like that. But I've been to Kyoto many, many, many times. I love Kyoto. It's, it's everybody should go there. It's super tourist friendly. So, you don't need to speak Japanese. Everybody seems to at least understand a little bit of English. All the businesses are set up for guests. It's a great place, but it's also, beautiful temples, lots of traditional food. Onsen, not far away. Osaka is a really unique, special place, and the people in Osaka are quite different from the people in Tokyo. And I don't know if you've noticed, but their train stations are very Art Deco. It wasn't, Osaka wasn't affected in the war, so they have all these beautiful old train stations, and the street food in Osaka is just insane. Food's really, really good.
How about
there.
Heading more south? Are there other?
I think I'm heading to Kyushu this next trip.
Wow,
which is really nice, and go eat some, the home of the land of tonkotsu, and seafood is really great down there, and really fun. It's a little slower, but it can be quite cosmopolitan down in Fukuoka. So it's a really fun place.
I think
to
Fukuoka
visit.
you think of as the heart of ramen in Japan, right? It's
the heart of tonkotsu ramen.
Tonkotsu ramen.
Yeah, it's the ramen in Tokyo. To me, Tokyo is still the place where if you want to be able to see all the different styles and see what people are thinking about, then Tokyo might be this. But after the boom, ramen started to really, even in places where it had already been known. Even in Kyoto, where Kyoto's not known as a ramen place. But now there's all kinds of, like ramen streets there, and there's a lot of activity going on in Kyoto and Osaka. So it's the ramen boom has affected the whole country.
Yeah, it's amazing. Let's pivot to another topic you hold dear to your heart, which is pizza.
Right.
You own a pizza shop.
I do.
Called the Corner Slice.
Yep.
Dope pizza, man.
Thank you.
Dope pizza. I love it. I've been many times. It's in Gotham Market where the Slurp Shop is. So is this something you want to do a lot of, or is this scratching an itch for you? Because it sounds like ramen is still
I don't want to do anything that I don't do a lot of.
All right.
Because I'm a business guy.
Fair enough.
I think, it's, and I think the Corner Slice it's really great because we've tried to keep the prices down and not have it be one of these sort of foo-foo, fancy ass places where a slice of pizza costs $6 or $7. We really tried to keep it because, the whole idea of the Corner Slice, first of all, that Blue Bottle space was opening up, and the landlord was like, it'd be great if you could do something in there. So we got us sort of thinking, and
you landed on pizza right away.
Well, my former chef from Ivan Ramen and Slurp Shop, he left after the first year. After we got our review, and he wanted to do other things, and he left. But we were very close, and we stayed in touch with him. So we reached out to him and said, "What do you think? About that space?" And he said, "Well, I've been doing a lot of stuff with pizza lately." And we all talked about it. And all of us have lamented the disappearance of the slice. And it's so funny because it's moved so fast. A lot of the stuff that's happening now we thought of so long ago, but we're stuck in a market where we don't get quite the street cred of having your own, four walls. So it's been a little bit harder to project your personality when you're sharing a space in a food hall. Making excuses.
But what's your style? Because I think it has a unique style that you really landed on.
Well, I think it's a hodgepodge of a lot of different techniques and things. But it's a 48-hour cold fermented dough. We make our own mozzarella. We blend tomatoes. We make our own sausages. We make all our own pastry. We make our own bread for the sandwiches. We do, it's really a bakery. At the end of the day, it's a pizza place, but we're a bakery and we can bake anything.
And using bread ovens.
And we use a deck oven.
Deck oven. Okay.
We use a deck oven. We use we did a lot of research. We got this really badass Pizza Master deck oven that everybody's starting to, realize is great because it can heat really high. We don't need it to be at 950 degrees, but it goes to 950 degrees and it holds its temp really well. So it's a beautiful oven and we just really, we did a grandma slice. It's business-wise, grandma slices are really nice.
That's my jam. I always think it's not far from our office. If you haven't noticed, and I walk over there sometimes and grab a grandma slice because got to have one in the afternoon.
It's so good. But it's great. I love seeing all the great pizza places opening up around the city because it's, when I was a kid, you could grab a slice, practically on every freaking street corner. And then it just disappeared. And then there was the scourge of the dollar slice came. Yeah. And everybody's like, oh, yeah, I had a slice at the dollar. And I was like, yeah, that's just not pizza. Just so you know, it's not pizza. It's it's not real food. They use the absolute base. Who knows if the FDA would even allow this stuff if they paid attention. And we use, organic flour that's freshly milled in the Hudson Valley. And it's, where we really just try to make, because, pizza's a great food cost item, right? So if you use bleached white flour and you use commodity mozzarella,
10 cents a slice.
It's really cheap. And then you can still charge $2 to $4 a slice. But it's crap. And like I said, once again, I'm not naming names. I'm not saying anything. People will do what they do.
You're diplomatic. The dollar slice came up in my feed last week. There was something written about the dollar slice. You can't go there, but I feel like the dollar slice fairly is how people eat in New York. It's a fucking expensive city.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's fair.
I think
that's fair.
That's the other side of the coin. But I agree.
Although I will tell you that there's been many points in my life where I was not flush and where I did not have very much money, and I always made a PB&J. It was always in my bag with an apple, and so I've always chosen to eat food I make or eat something good.
Completely fair.
I gave up fast food when I was 17, and my friends were on a Taco Bell just like they were every single day. They would come come to the party house wherever we were hanging, and they would bring giant bags of Taco Bell, and I just said, "Gunug."
I want to talk
more.
No more, and I want to talk about your books, because first off, your book Ivan Ramen from 10 Speed. If listener, pick it up. It's a great read. It's a book. I mean, it's your story. The first 75 pages is your story. Now, so tell me, that book, is there a second part to it? I know that you're working on another book project, right?
Yeah, it's coming out. It's coming out in the fall.
So it's coming out in the fall. But first, back to the Ivan Ramen book. Tell us, has that book sat well with you? Are you happy with it? Do you want to do more about your story?
God, I mean, it gets to the point with this story. When are people going to be tired of it and just say, I don't want to hear it anymore?
Great story, though, Ivan.
I keep telling it, and sometimes I feel bad. I'm like, I'm so sorry.
It's inspirational, though,
Yeah.
to be honest. It's inspirational. It makes people feel good. It makes people want to work hard. It makes people want to, get over loss. I mean,
Right.
It's really, and it helps people get through it. It's a lot of, I don't want to spoil anything, because you should definitely pick it up.
Well, I mean, listen, if you can't tell, I have a very strong opinion about just about everything. And I'm a big reader, so I've read, many, and I've read, thousands and thousands of books in my life. And I have 500 cookbooks at home. I've read a lot of cookbooks. And so I had a real clear idea about what I wanted this cookbook to do and to say. I mean, since I've done Netflix, I've heard a few people complain, wow, it's just, the Netflix show is written. But I was like, yeah, well, the book came first, and it's not my fault that, that's where the Netflix went in that direction. So it is very similar. But I think that, we wanted to tell the story, and then I wanted to write, so you have to picture this. I decided to open a ramen shop in Tokyo. This is 2006 when, things have changed a little bit in Tokyo now. Now you can convince someone to let you come into the kitchen for a week and they'll teach you. Or I see foreigners in ramen shops now. But when I started, almost none of that existed. It was very rare. It existed, but it was rare. And I had already been cooking for 15 years or so, and I didn't really want to go to work in a ramen shop for a year or two before I was really taught anything. And I didn't want to be disrespectful and ask to be taught how to make ramen in 2 or 3 weeks. So I was, I just decided, you know what, man, I don't have the balls to ask someone to teach me in a short period of time, and I'm not interested in doing another apprenticeship because I already did one. And so I ended up going home and just, I went to the Yamato Ramen School for 6 days, which
What did that cost?
It was $2,500, I think. Yeah, now I think it's 5 or 6. But but you know what? It was taught by non-cooks who had been trained to sort of help you, Originally, apparently, the Yamato president told me that he started selling these noodle machines, and he did very well selling lots of them, but the failure rate was really high, and he was very distressed that many of his customers were going out of business. So he decided he would open this school, and he would help people to sort of get more of a grounding on what style they really want and how to make their ramen better. For me, it was cool. So they didn't really... it was called a ramen school, but it was 6 days. So when people tell me, I'm going to go to this ramen school and in 6 days I'm going to learn how to make ramen. And I'm like, no, it's impossible. Because it takes more than 6 days to learn how to cook, And I went there with a lot of experience, and it was a great affirmation for me about what I knew and didn't know, and it helped me to think through those things, and it demystified a few things because, for a Western-trained chef like myself, I'm a classically trained cook, we're taught to clean up our soup. And in ramen, you're turned to, in simplistic terms, you're taught to dirty your soup. So, you spend all these years trying to make this thing pristine, and now all of a sudden you're doing it sort
cloudy.
of, it's cloudy
part of the ramen
or whatever.
paradigm,
Yeah. Or you're it's just a different thought process.
Yeah.
So it was a little complex to get my head around. And I still have to say, after all these years, ramen is still one of the hardest things to make. And even if I make a bowl you might say, oh my God, that's just perfect. When I try to make the next one, it takes just as much energy. I've never really found that now that I know how to make ramen, when I want to make one, in 5 minutes I make a perfect bowl. It takes
semi-famously, this book has about a 60-page recipe for ramen.
Yeah.
Which I think is
But I dreamed of the book. So when I was opening this ramen shop, I dreamed of a book that would tell me how to make ramen. But, and even though my reading of Japanese isn't bad, and I read lots of Japanese books, no one they always stop short of telling you the secret ingredient, or once you read through it carefully, you'd realize there's something missing. And so it was and then when you would ask a ramen guy, hey, how do you do something? They wouldn't answer, or they would be like, well, and so it was really awkward. And I just said, you know what, man, fuck it. I'm just going to learn to do this on my own. And I just sat in my little kitchen in Tokyo until I got it right.
And you see that book in ramen shops around the world. I've seen that book, your book, just on the shelf.
Well, you know, man, like I said, I am not I love competition. I love the brotherhood and the sisterhood of cooking. I love working with other people. I would never claim to know more than anybody else, and I always make sure people know that the way I feel is that I am an expert of ramen, but I'm only an expert of Ivan ramen. So if you want to argue with me about Ivan ramen, I'm perfectly happy to stand toe-to-toe and argue, but I would never claim to know anything past what I do. And I'm constantly learning and constantly trying to be better and trying to just, and I love that I love that ramen is expanding. It's great. It's because I also love Japan, and I always saw this ramen thing, especially when I returned to the United States, that I would always be disappointed. I'd meet some really well-educated, well-traveled person, and they would say, my dream is to go to Japan someday. It's on my bucket list. And I'd be like, dude, really? That's like, and if I'd said to you, my bucket list is going to Paris, but I'm not a poor person. I'm a normal person. You'd be like, well, just go. And I look at these people, I'm like, just go. Like, I don't understand it.
The most magical place to visit. And listener, it's easy to get around.
It's easy to get around.
It's not always been that way, but I've been a few times in the past 5 years. I went also 18 years ago, and it's dramatically different, right? I mean,
lots more English, less signs, and I give people lots of advice.
Google Maps works really well.
Yeah. I'll give you my tourist advice. Here's my tourist advice. If you're going to go to Tokyo, number one, if you're going to spend money on a hotel, make sure you spend enough so that you can have a good concierge. And then whether it's 1 month away or 9 months away, start getting on that concierge right away. Tell them what you can and can't eat. Tell them where you'd like to go. If you see Sugita, Saito-san, whatever, so, I want to go to a great sushi place. What place can you get me into? Because the concierge will line up reservations. That's their job. And it'll make your life a lot easier. They'll even put you in a cab with a note for the taxi driver.
It's a magical experience to have a great concierge. On the flip side, I'll say my experience last year was just Airbnb, man. I got like $110 Airbnb near Yoyogi Park. And it was...
I had one. I did too. And you get your little Wi-Fi guy, so you can throw it in your bag, right? And you got full Wi-Fi going on.
It was $110 a night. It was so great. And there's a lot of... It's a university area around Yoyogi, and I was like... Well, you can go either way. Both are pretty great.
And then I tell people, go to ramenadventures.com, right? Brian McDuxton's ramen website. The dude is just awesome, and all he does is write about great places to go to. And now he writes about all over Japan. It used to be just Tokyo, but now he's been traveling a lot. So he talks about all kinds of really cool places. The Eater 38. Essential. It's getting a little bit old now, a little long in the tooth. It came out, I think, 3 years ago, but that's got some good ideas. Robbie Swinnerton from Japan Times.
Yep.
He's always writing about great places, so you can Google Japan Times and check out their food file, Robbie Swinnerton's food file. So there's a lot of ways. Like I said, when I moved back to Japan in 2003, there was nothing. I had to read everything in Japanese. There was almost nothing written about where to eat or what to do, and now it's insane.
Let's hear a little bit about the book coming out in the fall. You're working with Chris Ying, formerly of Lucky
with Chris
Peach.
Ying. He's been my co-author. We're real pals. We get along great, and both of us have we're both super detail oriented. We're super hard workers, and we both do what we say and say what we do. So it's which, believe it or not, is can be very rare.
Kind of rare.
Yeah.
Actually, like following through. It's called follow through, Ivan.
Yeah.
I get frustrated. It's sometimes
and my brain sometimes I'm like, I don't know. You said you were going to do it. Why didn't you do it? I don't understand.
Yeah.
I almost never say I'm going to do something if I can't do it.
It's so. What's the book about? Tell us about
the book. It's called the Gaijin Cookbook.
Cool.
Which I guess is a little bit... every once in a while, I get hit with, wow, that's controversial. I'm like, what? Well, because in Japan, up until, not that long ago, some guy could just look at you and go, oh, gaijin. And it's
pejorative. It has its subtext there.
I don't think it's as bad as some of the other bad words we could think about, but I think that it has a negative connotation. But I had my friend visiting from Tokyo right now. So she said, wow, that's gaijin. That's tough. That's, and I said to her, I go, look, I'm a gaijin.
It's highly specific.
You have to know that people still to this day, I meet people that have been living in New York, Japanese people living here for 25 years, and they give me the same shit. They're like, it's so amazing what you've been able to do with the Japanese culture, and your palate's so good. And I'd be like, go fuck yourself. You've been living here for 25. How about you? Ooh, it's so cool that you're a New Yorker. Like, can you ride the subway? When you eat a pretzel, how do you get it into your mouth? It must be very hard for you. And then they get really insulted, and they're like, well, what are you saying to me? And I was like, the same shit you're saying to me. Expats almost always know more than the people that live in the country because we're passionate about the country we're visiting. So you meet a expat in New York and they'll know like all about the governors going back 200 years or something. And you'll be like, why do you know that? And they'll be like, oh, I just love New York. It's so interesting.
I have a passion for it.
And so I'm that way. This book is going to be about Japanese home style cooking. It's going to be super fun. Basically, it's the way I cook at home.
Mm-hmm. Well, as you just said, the dashi and the cabbage and the hamburger.
Exactly.
I love that shit, man.
And it's so good. I really made the recipes dead simple. No bullshit. And I wasn't trying to be a dick when I wrote the Ivan Ramen recipes, by the way. It was just that I wanted to say, this is my Shio ramen recipe. This is exactly how I make it in the restaurant, except instead of 100 portions, it's 4. And so I didn't do it to make any kind of statement. I didn't do it to be a jerk. I just said, this is the book that I dreamed of being presented with when I wanted to open my ramen shop. So I wanted to offer a book with the recipes that really work, that peel back that mystery that all these ramen chefs, I said to I have a very good friend of mine who at one point was probably one of the most famous ramen shop owners in Japan. And I said to him, I go, nobody ever wants to talk about how they make their ramen. Like, why won't they tell me? And he goes, because they don't know dick.
It's all winging it.
They're all winging it. They know how to do one thing really well, and they don't know anything else. So I mean, that's I didn't say that. That's what he told me. But so these are recipes that I cook at home. My wife and I cook together a lot. She'll say, I feel like eating, cabbage with dashi in it. And I'll be like, well, tell me how I should make it. And she'll like, well, I'll get the cabbage and cut it up cut it like this. That's too big. Cut it smaller. I'm like, okay. And over the years, we had this whole rapport. We're really fun. My wife and I, we're glued to the hip. We do everything together. We take Pilates together.
Follow it on Instagram, man. Your wife's always up in the stories. I love it.
She's she and I are tight. And
that's great.
And so we had a lot of fun doing all these recipes. I rewrote every single recipe myself. I tested every recipe myself. And then Chris tested the recipes. So they work.
What's the recipe that's in your head right now that's going to be a big one? Right now we're thinking of books in terms of like viral recipes. What is the one that will be viral? Because I know there will be one. I'm sure there will be.
I don't know. I'll have to think about it. We have a bunch of good hot pots in there, and which is super fun. Yeah, the nabes that are. I would love for people to, just go out and buy themselves a gas Conroe, what do you say in English? A gas, a tabletop gas burner
for Korean barbecue too.
Yeah,
shout out. Yeah.
If you have a gas burner and you go, I mean, the nabes, they can be, a couple of $100, but you can also go to the H Mart and buy one for $22.
On 32nd Street, there's a whole section. There are about $20.
Yeah, and Korean food and Japanese food are very different, and yet there's a lot of similarities. And so, my go-to place is H Mart. I shop there all the time, and they have a lot of wonderful ingredients. And it's and you can get stuff there, and they sell lots of Japanese ingredients as well. But the nabe in the winter, it's so fun to sit. Everybody sits around the pot, and it bubbles, and you add stuff, and you pull it out, and you add more stuff in, and it's very communal, and it's very heartwarming, and it's a really nice thing to.
Buddy,
I
can't wait to cook from it.
Yeah, it's gonna be a good book.
Ivan Orkin, thank you for joining the Taste Podcast.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Here's Matt playing the game F, Marry, Kill with Deb Perelman.
Deb, we have a question for you. There's this fun schoolyard game called F, Marry, Kill. You can Google it if you want the full name, but we're going to call it F, Marry, Kill. Let's play that game.
Okay.
F, Marry, Kill, Deb. Grilled cheese, corned beef, PB&J.
Definitely marry peanut butter and jelly, and do not marry anybody who does not appreciate peanut butter and jelly. This is very important. I don't want anyone judging my peanut butter and jelly on store-bought bread. Thank you very much. I guess corned beef? Yeah, I guess so. I mean, it's a solid. This is a staple. This is like the stability you need in your life. And I could just do without grilled cheese. I know. It's like a really unpopular opinion. I just find it I like cheese that's melted. I like butter, fried bread. I like all of those things together. It just feels like so oily and heavy to me. Yeah. I know. God, I'm sure I'm just making it wrong and it's me, but I usually personally need some vegetables in there or something to make it more interesting, which I understand completely defeats the purpose of eating fried bread with a piece of cheese in the middle.
I like that. So we're effing PB&J, we're marrying corned beef, and we're killing grilled cheese. Does that sound right to you?
Yeah, I think that's fine. I don't need to ever have grilled cheese again in my life.
Yeah, I'm with you. Thanks a lot, Deb.
The Taste podcast is hosted by Matt Rodbard and me, Anna Hezel. The show is produced by Gabrielle Lewis, studio recordings by Pat Stango, theme music by Steve Rydell. Interviews are recorded live at Books Are Magic in Cobble Hill, Brooklyn, and at Penguin Random House Studios in Manhattan. Visit Taste online at tastecooking.com. Thanks for listening.